This weekend on the original Rochester Press Box.
And I'll tell you why the good old days are still here at the Blue Cross Arena.
I'm going to tell you why my favorite sports day of the year involves guys in suits with cell phones.
2 coaches, over 2,000 wins. I'll tell you about it.
East High and McQuaid, 6 players on the court, and the reaction to it. The Brew House was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewHouse.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. Before we begin, I want to just, because we hadn't done this before, we want to thank John DiTullio for 5 great years he put in as a regular on this panel. He and Mike, of course, the original foundation members of the show, that really got us going. And, you know, we appreciate it. His schedule doesn't permit him to do this on a regular basis, but we don't want that to go unnoticed.
That's true, and John did a great job, but 5 years is a bit of a stretch because he showed up about, I'd say, give him about 4 total, right?
Well, we still love him. So all this means is you're on a mighty short lease, Mr. Duffy.
Yeah, no, I saw the way you treated John with those tough gloves. I'm really afraid.
All right. Pat Duffy from the Breakroom, Mike Catalana co-hosting.
You weren't kidding last week about him being a regular, were you?
Yeah, this is 2 weeks in a row. I think that's pretty unprecedented. And it's great to have Jeff Calkins, the general manager of the Blue Cross Arena at the War Memorial here.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's big Section 5 day, Sunday afternoon, a whole bunch of basketball games. It's always a security concern. And they're changed procedures a little bit. Is there a solution to this problem?
I don't know if there's a solution, but there are measures that we've taken to try and curb it. Our opening night is tonight, is Wednesday night, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. This year we did a little bit of a retro in going back and selling tickets at the school. So we know the kids that are participating, that are going to go to the games, are actually students of the schools, and they'll have direct access into the venue. What we are going to do is, this year, if you're under the age of 20 years old, if you're a student, you need a parent or a guardian or an adult with you to buy tickets.
I didn't know anyone that reacted positively to this the first time they heard it.
It's a tough one. We've done it before with other games, and this is our first time with Section 5. But what we want to do is limit the people who are there just to cause problems and allow the people who are there to watch the games and want to participate in the Section 5 excitement to come in. And it's a work in progress, and I'm sure we'll need to massage it as we go. But the bottom line is, there's 99% of the people that walk in those doors want to see a great game. Mm-hmm. It's that small element that sneaks in that causes a problem, and then they're gone. But the impact of that is a ripple effect, because 3 or 4 people will incite 200 or 300 people to gather around and see what's going on. Then it becomes a problem.
It is a great day, though.
It's fantastic, and Jeff's 100% right in terms of the amount of people. It is a small amount of people. The vast majority are there. It's a great day. It's an inexpensive thing to go watch the games. Great effort. The kids love playing there when they get their opportunity. It's a shame because of that and other issues. You know, the glass is still up, the hockey glass. I would like to see that down, but they've kept that. Basically, they don't want anybody storming the court. They don't want to. And sometimes you look and you go, would this really be an issue? You don't need the issue. It's still an enjoyable day, but I think it's sad that we're at that point that we have to protect the many from the few.
Well, it's funny how easy everybody forgets what they did when they were kids, right? Because when everything happened last year that it did, on the show, The Breakroom, we start talking about, it was kind of always this way, right? And we get calls from guys who went to East and McQuaid in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And a guy calls, 1979 City Catholic League playoff game at the Blue Cross Arena, then the War Memorial, how there was a massive fight there. But nobody ever talks about that. Like, you did it when you were a kid. Your kids are probably going to try and do it now. It's not a new problem. It's just there's television cameras and cell phone cameras catching absolutely everything. I don't think it's as much of an issue as people say it is. I mean, I know you have to address it, and I understand you're doing your job, but it's always kind of happened this way. Nothing terrible's happened.
I think it is a little different, though. I do think years ago it was more, we're from McQuaid and we're from East and we're this and we're that. I think now there is a small percentage of people who come there with no rooting interest, no emotion to the games, no, I don't like Aquinas, whatever it happens to be. It's just, I'm going to see if I can get a fight going here.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not school spirit. It's just someone who wants to earn their merit badge in a fight at the Blue Cross Arena and get a reputation.
Now the result may be the same, that it makes it uncomfortable for the large percentage of people, to Pat's point, that it is in a certain way. If you're just sitting in the stands and you see a fight, you don't really care how or why it started. You're going, oh my, I got to fight, I have my kids here and whatever. But I do think the motivation's a little different.
Overall, if you come to the game, you're going to have a great time. It's going to be a great experience.
This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. What the heck happened at East High last week? We'll get into that next. The Hillside Family of Agencies works with youth and families on their own terms, helping them pursue their own goals, whether at home, work, school, or one of the Hillside campuses, offering encouragement and commitment, standing with families, helping to create a healthy future. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. I'm Bill Pucko. This portion of the Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House, is brought to you by our friends at the Hillside Family of Agencies. Funny story.
Okay.
I was at East High for the East High McQuaid game just because I wanted to see it, sitting right behind the scores table adjacent to both benches. This was the game that East won virtually at the buzzer with 6 players on the court inadvertently. I didn't know until the next day that there had been a problem with that game. What happened?
Well, circumstances too. The coaches didn't notice. Obviously, the referees didn't notice. The way the play was set up, McQuaid sort of in a zone defense. They're not guarding the inbounder. So from a basketball perspective, East was spread out. It wasn't like, I've got my man, you've got your man. All of a sudden, there's an extra guy, and I'm like, who's this guy? So from that perspective, he didn't see it. And obviously, it got by everybody. They end up scoring a basket, and they end up winning the game. A huge mistake, an omission. It's just a flat-out mistake.
Now, the reaction to it is all like, okay, how did McQuaid handle it? And the secondary story, how McQuaid handled that contrasted with what Aquinas did when Jake Zembeck was declared ineligible after the fact of a playoff football game.
Okay, so before I pop off, full disclosure, Aquinas graduate, class of 2004, football state champion, 2002, no big deal. All right.
Yada, yada.
I have a problem with the way McQuaid handled this. Because the lesson I want my son taking out of high school isn't sometimes bad things happen and what can you do. The lesson I want my son taking out of high school is if there's any chance for you to fight, keep fighting. That's what Aquinas did for their kids. Now, whether you believe Aquinas cheated, whether you believe Aquinas took it too far, the bottom line is this. They saw kids that might have played their last football game ever. And they didn't want kids to leave the school on that note, so they did everything they could to make sure those kids could play on what they thought was a misinterpretation of a rule. McQuaid, on the other hand, and whatever, it's a classy thing to do, fine. They tell these kids, well, sometimes it goes bad, too bad. Well, some of those kids are never going to play basketball competitively ever again. Did you do everything you could for those kids to make sure they got what they deserved? And that's my issue with McQuaid.
Jeff, you got kids in school.
I do, and I think with Aquinas, there was a potential result that would benefit the kids. With McQuaid, what are you going to do? You can't go back and play the last 16 seconds.
Well, I think that's what a lot of people want to do. Let's go replay those last 16 seconds again.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. Is if it weren't for social media, if it weren't for somebody's cell phone, would anyone even known?
I was there and didn't. I was there and I stayed to the end. It was the last one out of the building and did not know there had been a problem.
I'll separate the two issues. I don't mind Aquinas pushing to try to stay on there. Aquinas was at fault, in part, with that issue, in terms of specifically the paperwork issue. They had at least some level of fault, and I think it should have been handled better. I understand them pushing. That was also a team that was going to win a state championship or likely going to do that.
Which is inconsequential.
It is, but I could see that team, and they know it with Jake, that team had that opportunity to do it. So they pushed it, and I think there are Aquinas grads who were embarrassed by the way that went, and they let the school know. But they did fight for it. The McQuaid part, I love what they did. And I think that it's not a fixable error. It is an error that was made on the court, and I think there is a time for a kid to learn that everything can't be fixed. And there was no way to fix that. And they realized it was a huge mistake, but it was an omission. East High did not cheat by sending an extra player. East High screwed up too and got away with it is basically what it was.
It could have cost them the game.
Absolutely, it would have cost them the game. I do think there's a time you say, everybody knows it was wrong. Everybody knows. Sometimes, even if it's wrong, you can't fix it. And I like that lesson, not just for those kids, for all kids to know.
I see philosophically, and I know, philosophically, it's at some point, both these schools had to ask the question whether or not, we treat this as a learning lesson or we go to court.
Well,
and which is the high and which is the low road. And they both had to face that.
Let's be real here, though. Let's not sugarcoat this thing. McQuaid had the benefit of seeing the negative public relations stuff that Aquinas got when they did what they did. And I wonder if we flip the times of these two events, if the McQuaid basketball game happened exactly the way it did 6 months before the Aquinas football game thing did, would McQuaid go further in trying to make it right? I think they might have. And, I mean, let's be real. We've seen the statement from the coach of McQuaid, who was obviously upset with the way the school handled it. And I get it. I think that the guy who runs the school is trying to take the high road because he saw what happened, and they're benefiting from seeing what happened to Aquinas before.
Well,
last word on that?
To Pat's point, McQuaid also knew they really did not have anything they could do about it. And but I believe they would have taken the high road. And I think regardless of the timing with the Aquinas thing, I think that's the way they would have handled it, in part, too, because they knew there was no recourse. There was nothing that was going to change. And I'm happy it's that way. This is not the NBA. We don't go back and replay video. It was a mistake. It happened. Move on. If it was brought to their attention while they were still in the court, they could have stopped play, and then they would have called it.
But then the players are already in the benches.
Right.
It's unfixable at that point, and you realize, geez, there might have been a problem, and now the fans are upset.
It's
and the coaches
unfixable,
are looking at
and
it.
we know that it was an error. You know it. You can see it.
As bad as it was, it could have been worse. This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. This portion of the Press Box brought to you by the Hillside family of agencies. Like it or not is next. As we go to break, it is time for the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Is called Turnbull at 343-2005. As we come back from the break, time for the answer to the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Just call 343-2005. See New York in a whole new way. Amtrak is offering a 15% discount for all travel inside New York State and to Montreal. Visit Amtrak.com for the See New York discount. Safe, comfortable, affordable, and easy. Amtrak. Enjoy the journey. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. I'm Bill Pucko. This portion of the Press Box brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Like it or not, Mike, the handling of the LeSean McCoy case.
In one way, I don't like it because they look bumbling, and it's a fight between the DA's office and the cops union, and they don't want to look like giving special treatment to McCoy because he's a famous person, because I don't think this normally would happen. But on the other hand, I like the fact that it wasn't just we've got this guy, and he is on tape, and right away he gets charged with something that will never hold up in court or never hold up with the evidence. So you might as well wait to see what's there. At this moment, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I would be hard-pressed to think there won't be some form of a charge and probably a plea from McCoy. I think something will happen, but I think on the legal side, it's going to be on the lesser side, and then we'll see what happens
I
with
think
the
in this
NFL.
case, celebrities working against him.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that I disagree with you based on what I'm hearing, and I got great sources, Mikey. I'm here. I mean, like, I don't think he's going to be charged, and he's going to be screwed because he's still going to get punished by the NFL. He's still going to get a suspension from missing throwing a punch in a nightclub the night of the Super Bowl, and it's because of his name, right? It's a nightmare for this guy. Charge him or don't. It should have never been public in the first place. It's been 2 weeks. Nothing's been happening. It's a circus all over the place. You got people sitting in lawyers' offices' bathrooms trying to get scoops on where LeSean McCoy's going to show up to meet with the DA. So let's move on from this thing. We're done. It's done.
Quickly, like it or not, Jeff, domestic violence suspension with pay for Jose Reyes, sort of setting Major League Baseball precedent here.
I think it's an opportunity for him to use that money for counseling or for showing the league and in the public that he's taking it seriously and that he wants to better himself. Depends on what he does during that off time that he'll have.
Sounds a little bit like the NFL's commissioners list, right? Isn't that kind of what they did with Hardy and and Adrian Peterson, where they kept getting paid, they weren't playing, they were suspended? It's almost like we don't want to deal with the union, we don't want to deal with the player being on the field, so we'll just kind of keep them at bay and let them get paid so we don't have that
You know,
issue.
it kind of works is it puts the onus on the team, which I like. The team has got to keep paying these guys, so maybe they'll stop signing knuckleheads who are going to get them into that kind of position. This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Unfinished Business is next. The Rochester Press Box Stat of the Week, brought to you by Cariglio's Pizza, with 5 locations serving the Rochester area. Visit carigliospizza.com today.
The new caramel macchiato at Dunkin' Donuts. Let handcrafted layers of espresso, milk, and caramel-flavored swirl uplift your mood. Indulge in a hot or iced macchiato today. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box, presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. This portion of the Press Box brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. We call it unfinished business. We'll let you start.
It's my favorite time of the year. NHL Trade Deadline is right around the corner, like literally coming up soon. Like tomorrow, I usually take naps during the day, right? Because I work really early. No nap for me coming up because I'm going to sit all day and watch NHL Network and see who's coming up and down on this trade deadline and see what Buffalo Sabres general manager Tim Murray, GMTM, has in the plans for this team because, we ship Mike Weber out, the defenseman. He's gone. They get a third-round pick for Mike Weber, who is essentially a bag of tape for most of his career in Buffalo. I don't mean to be rude, but it is what it is. The question I have is he going to pull the trigger on a legitimate NHL star to superstar to try and fix a scoring problem? Because I think if there's any time to do it, if there's the opportunity to do it, you have to do it now. There's really only 4 guys in all of the levels of this franchise that are untouchable. You got Eichel, you got Reinhart, you got Ristolainen, and you got O'Reilly. I believe everybody else, and you watch these games, you can speak to it, is wide open. Which is why, for me, where we are with this team, the potential for greatness, this could be the most exciting trade deadline ever. I'm going to stop thinking about it. I'm going to stop talking about it. I'm going to get ready for Monday. I'm going to sit and rub my hands like this. Right? No? Just
Is
me?
it going to happen?
I don't know. What am I watch? I don't know. I'm so excited.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, I've been at the Green Room many years. I've seen great moments throughout the years. Any sense that when I talk to someone, it always starts with, I remember the good old days. Well, you know what? I remember good old days, too. I remember the Amherst coming back from 2 goals down, tying it in the last minute, winning in overtime over a powerful Hershey team. I remember the Nighthawks coming back from 5 goals down to win the game and remain in first place. I remember the Razor Sharks beating an unbeaten Buffalo team in a wild slugfest that is reminiscent of an NBA All-Star game. Those weren't old days. Those actually happened in the last 6 weeks. So what I'm saying is that embrace your local teams, go see a game, and make memories for those you bring so someday they can talk about their good old days.
And stop complaining about the arena, maybe?
Yeah, that would be nice. And then very remiss if I didn't mention that Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band are coming back for the 7th straight sellout. And believe me, that just goes to show that the glory days aren't always the good old days. The glory days are happening now.
I'm going to talk a little bit about Glory Days, but it represents something that went on now. This past weekend, my old high school, St. Augustine in New Jersey, played St. Anthony's. You've probably heard of St. Anthony's basketball, the Hurley family. Bob Hurley Sr., the coach of that team. He matched up against my high school, undefeated at the time, but not quite at the same level of St. Anthony's. My former high school coach, yes, he's still coaching, Paul Rodeo, with over 850 wins, matched up against Bob Hurley, the coach of St. Anthony's, with 1,200 plus wins. 2,000 combined wins between the two. And on another personal note, it was in a tournament run by my brother, the Shoot Down for Cancer, brought in the beginning in honor of my nephew, Garrett, who survived cancer as a young guy and is now a student at St. Joe's. It was a phenomenal game and a phenomenal day in New Jersey, bringing back a lot of memories for a lot of people, and also the current state of high school basketball and high school sports. People waited in line to get in, not just for the Shoot Down for Cancer, but also to see great basketball. Yes, St. Anthony's won again. They're one of the top teams in the nation, but it was a great example of two guys who did it the right way in high school sports for a long, long, long time. And I don't know in high school sports if we'll ever see guys like this again.
That's awesome. This portion of the original Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Thank you very much. Good job, Duffy.
Oh, I know.
Passion.
I know.
Mike, thank you.
Trade deadline.
Come on, you're not excited?
He'll do better next week.
You got me excited now.
Thank you, he's excited.
Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Hey, pleasure.
Alrighty, and thank you for joining us. This is the original Rochester Press Box. We'll see you next week.